What is going on, guys? So I don't know about you, but I kind of think this whole transgender thing is a little weird. It's a little wacky, kind of strange, totally unnatural. And, I'm all for people doing whatever they want to do in life. I'm never going to tell anybody not to do something. And you people have heard me say this on this channel before. If somebody wants to do something, I'm not going to tell them not to, but I reserve the right to have my opinion about it. But I will never prevent somebody from doing or saying or thinking what they want to say, do, or think. So when it comes down to this transgender thing, I think the same way on that. If people want to change from a man to a girl or a girl to a man, I'm going to think it's fucking weird and strange, but I'm not going to tell them not to, and I'm not going to try and stop them. As long as they don't infringe upon my rights, I won't infringe upon theirs. But as an extension from that, this whole thing about transgender people and them being allowed to use the bathroom that they want to, it's very strange, and it's hard for me to get my head around why that would be seen as a good thing. And it doesn't take a smart person to realize that that has many social implications. So here's a debate. Tucker Carlson has some transgender lady on. I don't know what you guys think about it. Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next video.
Jillian Weiss is executive director of the Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund. After the guidelines retraction, Weiss denounced the administration's states' rights position as nonsense. Jillian Weiss joins us now. Jillian, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So I believe, for whatever it's worth, in politeness and decency and not making people uncomfortable, especially children. I have 4. But I also believe in honesty, and so I just want to get to what exactly this means. So I'm a 47-year-old man. I think that's pretty obvious. If I were to decide tomorrow that I was a 47-year-old woman, should I be allowed to go shower in a women's locker room?
The idea that there's no objective factors to be considered in who is transgender and how we determine bathroom use is really not the way that this works. The fact is that people make this decision after a lot of serious consideration. They see medical doctors, there's psychologists involved, there's a lot to think about. It's not an easy process. As someone who's gone through that, I can tell you, you just don't decide tomorrow. So that's really not the way it works.
But what if I did decide tomorrow? What should I be? And it was totally sincere. Or, by the way, how would you know whether it was sincere or not, or anyone know? Only I can make that decision. And what if I did? Would I be allowed to go and shower in a women's locker room? And if not, why not?
Well, I think the answer is no. And for example, we have the Gavin Grimm case, which, as you know, is coming up to the Supreme Court very soon. The ACLU just put out its brief in that case. And, they went through what he had to address. He changed his name. He had medical doctors. He had letters from psychologists and so on. It wasn't the kind of thing where he just came in and said, now I'm going to be using the boys' room. So
but let's go through because there's a lot at stake here, and you know this because you do it for a living. There's a lot of money at stake, and there's a lot bigger issues at stake. The definition of gender itself, which is at the center of any society. So what are the absolute standards that are required for a person to change his or her sex?
There is an organization called the World Professional Association of Transgender Health, which has a series of standards of care. We're on number 7 now, or 8 is coming up. And so this is something that doctors and medical people, psychologists have worked with for years, and there is a whole protocol. I can't give you the entire thing right now, but I think it's important to understand that there is something called transgender, and we have been here forever. We've been going to the bathroom forever.
Oh, but I'm not contesting any of that. And just to be totally clear, I'm not attacking anyone.
Yes.
But I think it's fair, because so much is at stake, to get much more precise than you are getting. So what exactly are the standards? And are they legal standards, or are they standards that you agree with? I mean, what exactly are the actual standards? Because, again, a lot of money is at stake here.
Yes. Well, the medical standards require seeing a therapist for a certain period of time before cross-sex hormones will be prescribed, a certain amount of time living as the opposite sex before certain kinds of medical treatment and surgery will be permitted. The other thing to keep in mind is that the courts have been parsing this for the last 15, 20 years. And so if somebody is being stereotyped because of their sex, because they're not perceived to fit in with appropriate masculinity or femininity, because of whatever people perceive as their birth sex, that is something that's prohibited by the anti-discrimination statute.
Right, so that's the anti-discrimination statute, but you still haven't explained, and I've asked you a bunch, what the legal standards are, because I don't think that there are any, and here's why that's a concern. So the federal government spends over $11 billion every year on sex-specific programs, and I'm sure you know what they are. The Small Business Administration, among many others, gives a ton of money to people because they are women. And so how are we supposed to navigate that if and let's be honest with each other, there are no standards actually, other than I say that I'm of a different sex. How are we supposed to navigate this, and what's going to prevent charlatans from jumping in and taking all that cash?
Well, let me give you an example. In the field of athletics, there are standards that have been developed for when someone is permitted to move into a particular single-sex activity. It involves how long they've been on hormones, how long their transition has been, whether or not they have the strength equivalent to, that, like in women's sports, for example. So there are standards that have been developed. Now, I don't know all of the details of that exactly, but you're asking, for example, how do we...
There is no absolute standard that's been developed, as you know. I mean, look, this is your job. You know that that's not true. There isn't. The WNBA doesn't have the same standard as the Olympics, as Notre Dame women's field hockey. I mean, there is no absolute standard.
Well, if that's what you're saying, is there an absolute standard? You're correct.
Yeah.
There is not an absolute standard. We are working this out as a society. It doesn't mean put transgender people back in the closet or tell transgender youth just, fend for yourself.
But nobody's suggesting that, at least on this show. What I'm suggesting is an adult look at this issue, and yet whenever you bring it up, like, what does this really mean? And can you actually change your sex biologically? You're denounced as, it's like a hater. And I'm just speaking for myself when I say that has nothing to do with it. I think it's fair to ask these questions. And so when are we going to find out exactly what it means to be a woman or a man?
Well, let me just suggest this. I have a list here of 25 studies that have been done over the last 15 years by scientists, peer-reviewed journals, discussing exactly what it means to be transgender when someone is transitioning, the difference in the basal ganglia of the stria terminalis, the neuron density in the brain, and so on. I'm sorry for being very technical. The point is there are biological differences.
You're big. I mean, let me ask you this. Can you ascertain a person's sex with a blood test throughout life, from birth until death, and will that result remain consistent?
No, not with a blood test.
Not with a blood test. Okay, I don't know if that's correct, actually. But the point is, look, do you agree that, and we'll just leave it here, but do you agree that until there is a commonly recognized, legally recognized standard for sex, what constitutes a man and a woman, that we ought to slow down a little bit, stop building up all these anti-discrimination statutes before we can agree on who is being discriminated against, who meets the standard?
We've had these laws in the books for the past, 40 years. They have come to understand that this includes transgender people. For the last 15 years, we're all over society. We are going to the bathroom. We are showering. We are in athletics. So you can't put us back.
But no one's suggesting that, and you're dodging the question because you don't have an answer. And I just hope that you'll take this seriously, because I think it's a serious issue, and I hope that you will too. It's not just a matter of saying we're here, we're not going away. It's a series of like doing.
But you're saying until we have a standard, until we have an absolute standard, we can't do anything, and so I disagree with that.
I'm saying don't give $11 billion away to people who are faking. Like, what are we even talking about?
Who's faking?
I still don't know.
Where's your evidence of faking? Tell me who faked it, and then we can discuss it.
Jillian, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.